play out with the evidence. But one of the things we were talking about is I think we have, as a society, become numb. I think that we have gotten too used to language that is so coarse that, we dehumanize people, especially, I would argue, the left, and I will play some of it in this hour. And the things they say, the closing arguments against Donald Trump in the last election. He's a Nazi, he's a racist, he's Hitler, he's Stalin, he's Mussolini. That is the embodiment of evil. For many years during election cycles on this program, Dr. Drew, I keep telling everybody what the Democratic playbook. Republicans are racist, sexist, misogynist, homophobic, xenophobic, Islamophobic, transphobic. They want dirty air and water, and they want to kill grandma. Here's my question, and this is your profession, and you're great at your job. Does that have a dehumanizing effect for people that may be prone towards mental illness, a hypnotic effect even, where it could, they might begin to believe these things that they hear day in and day out are true, and that ultimately if they plan some type of violence, they even think they're doing God's will?
Yes, there's even a word for this, or a formal name for it, called stochastic terrorism. Stochastic terrorism is the chronic use of outrageous implications against other people, epithets that cause people to believe that they are true, and lone wolves become motivated. It's called stochastic terrorism. And just think about it this way. If President Trump is Hitler, well then any patriot should be interested in taking out Hitler. And if Hitler's henchmen are around him, then they too should be assailed, because any patriot would want to do that. That's how outrageous this stochastic terrorism is. And at the same time as they're doing that, they're literally turning people into cartoon characters and dehumanizing them. I was rather shocked today when I saw Elizabeth Warren being approached, asked to help us turn down the rhetoric, and she immediately turned it on President Trump, saying it all starts there, he's so awful. They cannot, it seems, they can't let go of this rhetoric of turning somebody into a figure, which is through brainwashing and stochastic terrorism, a figure that anyone would be interested in conducting violence against.
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing. Look, I'm not saying that conservatives are completely innocent, but the level of vitriol and hatred, we call it Trump derangement syndrome. The absolute rage against this man, the argument I would make, the people on the right that you hear crazy things from are not mainstream conservatives. They're not accepted in conservative circles, with very few exceptions. But we're hearing this language regularly from the top leadership within the Democratic Party, the top candidates, the most outspoken voices, and the same with the media. I mean, we have 2 cable channels. Their whole mission in life is to hate on Donald Trump 24/7. Never mind 3 broadcast networks and most major newspapers. Thoughts?
Yeah, well, some of the rhetoric coming out of these organizations has been shocking. It's disturbing. But I'm trying to look for the silver lining of this. I know Charlie would want us to do that. And I am seeing rays of hope here and there. I've even seen people who had significant grievances against Charlie Kirk who were still able to say, but this is outrageous. This was not warranted. We should mourn this appropriately. On the other hand, I see other people telling people that they shouldn't mourn, how they should mourn. And I've seen behavior that is so outrageous. I said this last night. If you are engaged in behavior of celebrating somebody's murder, you need to look in the mirror and try somehow to find the better angels of your nature. Because the reality is you have something in you that is sinister, and it is being exposed by the stressful circumstances we are in right now.
Yeah. What do you think? Does a person like this have a conscience? Does a person like this feel guilt? They call it Catholic guilt. I went to Catholic schools 12 years. If I snap at somebody, I feel terrible and want to apologize. What's missing here?
Yeah. Well, you're asking a super complicated question, and I really can't answer it accurately, except to say there are some interesting features of this particular case, if indeed that is the perpetrator. He didn't seem to have left a manifesto. And if you think about the manifestos we've been seeing lately, they've been rambling, nonsensical, sometimes psychotic. In the case of the kid, I think it was a young man that shot up the Catholic Church and killed those children, his manifesto that was on a video was so cold-blooded, it suggested actual psychopathy. And if indeed somebody's a psychopath, no, they really don't have emotions, they don't have guilt. But there's a range of phenomenon going on here. This sort of thing, to me, could either be that, or somebody who, again, was hypnotized, persuaded, dehumanized someone, and really felt they were a political operative doing the right thing. Remember, social ills get done. Social ills are always done in the name of good. Always. There's never somebody intending to be bad.
You know, it's funny. I stated last night, and I stated after the joint session speech with President Trump, and when he introduced the family of Lake and Riley, they lost their daughter. She was out jogging in Georgia. The family of Jocelyn Nungary, a beautiful 12-year-old girl, horribly raped and murdered. And that young man that became a Secret Service agent that night, he'd beaten cancer up to that point. And Democrats wouldn't stand. And I said at that moment, to me, it was a tipping point that the Democratic Party, not but one of them stood. Nobody clapped. And how can you not? To me, they lost their heart, their soul, their conscience. That's not a political statement. This should be apolitical to stand for a family that lost their daughter, another family that lost their daughter, a young man who aspired to be in law enforcement. He beat cancer and becomes a Secret Service agent. That's just simple, basic humanity to me. Dr. Drew, we always appreciate you being on the show. Thank you. Very insightful. All right, earlier today at the White House, President Trump had the opportunity to remember Charlie Kirk while speaking to reporters. Let's take a look.
I spoke to Erica, his wife, and we had a long talk, and she's devastated. She's absolutely devastated, as you can imagine. I've never seen a person that was a little bit older get along so well with you. He got along with young people. I've never seen anything like it, and he really helped me a lot. I did very well, as you know, with young people, and he was a big factor.
Mr.
How are you?
President, are you going to go to Charlie Kirk's funeral, sir?
I will be.
You will. Do you know when that
I
will be?
believe it's in Arizona, and they've asked me to go, and I think I have an obligation to do
Do you
that.
know when that will be?
I'm hearing I hear next weekend. Whenever it is, I'll be going.
All right, joining us now is Donald Trump Jr. is with us. First of all, Don, thanks for being here. Our deepest sympathies. I know how close you were to Charlie, how much he loved you, your entire family, especially your father. I'm for a lot of people, we're having a very hard time comprehending or making sense of this because it doesn't make sense. Your reaction to all of it, I know he was a dear friend of yours.
No, it doesn't make any sense, Sean. I mean, Charlie was such a great guy, kind, articulate, one of the sweetest people I know. He gave so many of those who disagreed with him, he actually gave them his platform to debate. He wanted to have that conversation. He understood without that conversation that violence would ensue, and so he did everything to prevent that. And because he did so, and he did so articulately and so effectively, we killed him. His threat wasn't that he was a threat or malicious or anything. It was that he was very effective, and they had to make sure that didn't continue. They tried doing the same thing with my father. I've now had to have, a conversation about a loved one, almost being assassinated or actually being assassinated now 3 times with my 5 young children, and it's just not acceptable, Sean. It has to stop. It's absolutely disgusting. When you think of the things that Charlie spoke about, he spoke about God, he spoke about American values, he spoke about family. It was very controversial, Sean, very controversial that he said, men can't be women. He was about as reasonable as it possibly gets, and it didn't matter. They still killed him. So it's been a rough day.
It has been a rough time. It's been rough for everybody. And what he was doing was actually magical. It was brilliant in so many different ways. He'd go into a hostile environment, university campus, knowing there's a lot of left-wing indoctrination often going on, inviting everybody, all political points of view, prove me wrong. Let's have a discussion. And he'd do it with a smile on his face, and he was always a good cheer. I never saw the guy unhappy. He's always, upbeat, always open, didn't care about people disagreeing, wanted to have that dialogue, that debate. I would think a university should be a bastion of free speech and discussion and debate like that.
100%. I mean, he did that so well, and I think that's why he was able to shift and move the needle so much for the youth of America, who for decades were indoctrinated since kindergarten with leftist ideology. So he went to those places. He understood we couldn't just scream in our echo chambers to people who already agreed with us. We actually had to get out there. And you're not going to win over everyone, Sean, but I think if you look at what he did on college campuses, and God knows I was with him many times at those places, and there were times I questioned it, certainly early on, be like, wait a second, we're conservatives. We're not supposed to do it at a college campus. And we did it, and you realize when he made those arguments and he did it in his calm demeanor, he was able to win over, maybe not the radicals that were there to scream at him, but the people who went in there with an open mind, the people who went in there wanting to find out more, those people heard those arguments, and they realized very quickly that the ideas of the left weren't just bad ideas, they were absolutely ridiculous. And so, I truly credit Charlie with changing the minds and the mindset of so many millions of Americans, not just youth. I think he probably reached out across the aisle to many people, even if his targeted demographic was the younger generation that so many Republicans avoided for so long. He did that so well. It was funny. I was thinking about it earlier. I think I was the reason he was on your show the first time ever back in '16. I think I was supposed to do your show, and I was at a sleeping thing. Something was late, so I was going to be on stage. And I call you like, "Hey, Sean, I got a great one for you. I'm sending over Charlie Kirk," and you're like, "Who's Charlie Kirk?" I go, "Trust me, it'll be great." You're like, "Tell me." I'm like, "Wait, he's 21." And, like, he's like, "God, I can't put a 21-year-old on in prime time." What? I just Sean, I'm not going to be there. Congratulations. I have a great for you.
That's twice in my life I've had to say you were right. That's an inside joke.
Yeah.
There's a more serious issue at hand here, and that is what has gone on the last 10 years since your father and Melania came down the escalator at Trump Tower. The names that you and your family and your father have been called, the weaponization of our justice system. I brought this up with Eric last night. Nobody seemed to care that a judge got away with a phony valuation of Mar-a-Lago. Nobody seemed to care that a misdemeanor whose statute of limitations had run out about a legal NDA was turned into a novel 34 felony count. Nobody cared about the double standard raiding Mar-a-Lago, but not raiding Hillary Clinton's home or Joe Biden. He had 4 locations, top secret classified information. It really is troublesome to me that the left, and add to that their incendiary, insane language, which I do believe it has a dehumanizing effect. Maybe we're now numb to it because I play it every night and I play it every day on radio. I don't know. But we have to examine, they have to be held accountable for this never-ending rage. And it is rage, it is madness. Trump derangement syndrome is real.
And Sean, the violence only goes one way. Okay, it only goes one way. We've seen that now, whether it's the assassination attempts on my father's life, whether it's Charlie Kirk, whether it's the threatening of Supreme Court justice or doxing ICE agents, that goes one way. It is entirely owned by the left. So, when I watch, the radical left television right now, well, it's really a fault of both sides. No, it's not. It's not a fault of both sides. What was Charlie's fault? What were the things that he did that were so radical and so terrible? He talked about God, family, country, the Constitution is good, men can't be women. These are not radical ideas, Sean, but they are radical if they're effective against the agenda of the left. You saw that. Trump was effective against the agenda of the left, so you take him out. But they don't talk about the softball game shooting of Congress, Steve Scalise and the others. again, violence against Republicans. They don't talk about I can't frankly name a mass shooting in the last year or two in America that wasn't committed by a transgender lunatic that's been pumped up on probably hormones since they were 3-year-olds because they want to normalize that. And if you say something about it, it's verboten because we're supposed to trust the science even if it's not science and even if everyone understands it. Those people are protected, they are hidden, they are beyond reproach. You'll never see the manifesto. Now you're reading about trans paraphernalia written on the cartridges of this rifle that killed one of my dearest friends in life. It is absolute sickness. And I think the one thing that Charlie perhaps did better than anyone is Charlie actually brought people together. He brought people together that didn't necessarily agree with him. They showed up at those events. They heard him. They saw the exuberance of all these other youth, and they said, you know what? This guy's right. Like, there's nothing wrong with family, or loving your country, or loving America and being a patriot, believing in the Constitution. And the fact that he was able to be that effective is exactly why they had to take him out. Just like my father was willing and is willing to take on the swamp, to take on the establishment, to take on the globalists and the world elite, and do what's right for the hardworking men and women of America. You know what? You can say those things, but if you actually start doing it, if you're effective at doing it, we're going to take you out. This is a constant theme. Charlie was one of the kindest and mildest souls I've ever seen. He did those things. He had those conversations with a smile on his face. Again, as I said earlier, he gave his biggest detractors, the people who hated him most in the world, he literally gave them his platform on a daily basis to argue their ideas. And they couldn't do it effectively, so they had to kill him. And that's sick. That's a sad, sad place to be as a country, as a civilization, and certainly in America.
Don, I know you're close to his family. Have you had a chance to speak with them?
You know what? I called. We called Erica yesterday, his wife, and when we heard, he was at the hospital. He was perhaps stable. He was getting a lot of blood. She actually called us back, and for some reason we just saw the missed call, but it didn't actually ring. By the time we noticed that and got back, we'd heard the news. So I have not yet. Obviously, we're praying for them. We're thinking of them. We've sent the notes, but the way to make sure that Charlie's legacy lives on is just to stay active, maintain that unafraid posture that he had, and he showed so many, and opened the door for so many people to actually speak their minds, to speak the truth, to speak to that power. If we all learn something from Charlie and continue to do that, there's a great future for America. But if the other side gets what they want, which is to make us cower in fear and hide in silence and to shut up, that's not going to work. You see what's going on, the way they're continuing to, even today, trying to vilify him on left-wing media and anyone that defends him. But we're in a sick place. We must be unafraid, Sean. We must continue to speak our minds. We must all be out there. It can't just be Charlie Kirk or you or me or my father. It has to be everyone. And if we band together and unite, like he united so many people, so many people that were not conservative, they didn't necessarily even believe in those things, that weren't even political, but they saw that movement, they saw that energy, they saw the good. I think Charlie would be incredibly proud to see that legacy live on, and it will.
I think it will, and I think your message of pushing forward in spite of the risk. You've had white powder sent to you. I've had white powder sent to me. You've had threats against you and your family. You've watched your dad have two would-be assassins coming within 1 millimeter of losing his life. We now, after yesterday, we know what difference 1 millimeter can make. But there's nobody that I know that believes in the MAGA movement, your father, what's right for the country, that loves our Constitution, that's going to back down. And but is this now just the new reality we have to accept? I have about 30 seconds.
Unfortunately, I think it is, Sean. They've shown that if we try to just be nice and placate them, we actually have to stand up for ourselves. If we don't, they're more than happy to take us out. That doesn't mean violence. We can do that with words. We can do that with actions. We can do that with voting. We can do that with getting involved. But we must get involved. Apathy is what's going to destroy us. If they shame us into a corner and they fear us into silence, that's when they win. And if they win, that's a truly, truly dark and scary place for America. We can't allow that to happen, and Charlie would have never allowed us to do that.
Yeah, Don, I truly am sorry. As a friend, longtime friend, I know how close you were to him. I know how much he admired and looked up to you, and your entire family and your dad. And I know this is a tough day. Thanks for being with us and sharing your thoughts about it. We appreciate it. All right, and also tonight, Americans are marking 24 years since the September 11th terrorist attacks, with ceremonies, tributes across the country, honoring victims and heroes of that tragic day. We lost 2,977 of our fellow Americans that day, and we are losing more every day. 9/11 related illnesses, the wars that ensued. We can never forget. President Trump was at New York Yankees Stadium, Yankee Stadium tonight for the game, which began with a beautiful ceremony. And President Trump met with the players before the game, received a very warm welcome, and a USA chants breaking out across the stadium. Take a look. Now, the other insanity of the left is an issue we've not discussed tonight, and there's a lot to talk about. It has become even more readily apparent in their response to Charlie Kirk's political assassination. Last night, we showed you the vile language from Matthew Dowd on MSDNC suggesting, Charlie Kirk's rhetoric bore some responsibility for him being assassinated. Tonight, we can confirm Matthew Dowd has been fired from MSDNC, but he wasn't the only vile person on the left spewing vitriol. Listen to what Radical Squad member AOC said outside of the Capitol. Take a look.
Republicans said that it was Democrats' fault. Democrats did this. That's something you heard her say in the House.
I mean, people can finger point all they want. Look at the record. Look at the actions of what we are doing. I don't think a single person who has dedicated their entire career to preventing gun safety legislation from getting passed in this House has any right to blame anybody else but themselves for what is happening.
Congresswoman, assassins and criminals by definition, they do not obey laws. And one has to wonder, how many armed police, how many armed guards did you, Congresswoman, AOC, Grandpa Bernie, how many people did you have protecting you with arms once you landed on your private jet on your Fight the Oligarchy tour? Also, Democratic Massachusetts Congressman Seth Moulton blaming Republicans, and of course invoking January 6th. You notice they always on the left ignore the 574 riots in 2020 that resulted in dozens of dead Americans, thousands of injured cops pelted with bricks and rocks and bottles and Molotov cocktails. Did I mention billions in property damage? Take a look.
There are people who are trying to polarize us further, divide our nation further, and just blame the left, even while those of us on the Democratic side are by and large saying we all need to turn down the rhetoric. So let's be serious about where this violence is coming from. Of extremist violent attacks in America, extremist violent murders, 76% are from right-wing extremists, 4% are from left-wing extremists. I condemn that 4%, but we also need to be honest about it as a nation about where this violence is coming from. And by the way, it's probably an appropriate time to talk about guns too.
I don't know where he got those numbers. I don't believe them. The final argument for Democrats heading into the 2024 presidential election: racist, Nazi, Hitler, Stalin, Mussolini. Congressman Al Green, the guy that was thrown out of Trump's joint session of Congress speech earlier this year, was screaming and waving his cane back then. He's claiming it's Trump who's causing political violence because he called the radical left lunatics, which, by the way, is sadly a fact for many of them. Here's what he said today.
And if you want to talk about language that precipitates this kind of behavior, language that may in some way influence people, then you're going to have to start at the top. You're going to have to start at the top. You're going to have to start with a president of the United States who told police officers, you don't have to be nice when you're arresting people. President of the United States who came right here and right at that podium where the speaker is, the podium just below the speaker, and called Democrats lunatics. It was the same night that I was evicted from the joint session of Congress.
Yeah, waving his cane around. The legacy media mob, they weren't any better today. CBS Morning co-host Nate Burleson decided to lecture former House Speaker Kevin McCarthy on Republicans' rhetoric this morning. I don't recall Republicans' closing argument being Nazi, fascist, Hitler, Stalin, Mussolini. Do you? Take a look.
Speaking of this tragedy, is this a moment for your party to reflect on political violence? Is it a moment for us to think about the responsibility of our political leaders and their voices and what it does to the masses as they get lost in misinformation, disinformation that turns in and spills into political violence?
I say both parties.
Congressman Omar Mehdi Hassan might have been the worst of the day. You decide. Take a look.
There are a lot of people who are out there talking about him just wanting to have a civil debate.
A complete rewriting of history.
Yeah, there is nothing more effed up, than to completely pretend that his words and actions have not been recorded and in existence for the last decade or so. And you have people like Trump who has incited violence against people like me. And so these people are full of and it's important for us to call them out.
Now, this is just a small sample of the left's vile rhetoric and response. We almost can play it every single day on this show for you. And, there's only so much we can take. The amount of rage, hatred, pure insanity beyond the pale has been going on, as I said, to Don Jr. from the moment his father and Melania came down that escalator at Trump Tower. The left is not going to stop. They won't even acknowledge the basic fundamental things they are so wrong on so many levels. The left won't stop, but they need to. This needs to end. Sadly it won't, because they are the party of zero accountability for their actions. They have put the rights of men to play women's sports over protecting women's sports. They seem to care more about the Kilmar or Brago Garcias than they do about keeping American citizens safe. They seem to care more about scoring cheap political points against Donald Trump than allowing Donald Trump to assist them in restoring law and order and safety and security so that people in New York City, in Chicago, Los Angeles, San Francisco can pursue happiness. Anyway, here now with more. Fox News contributor Joe Concha. I know this is your wheelhouse. You've been watching. It's very hard to watch. However, I do think I've become numb to it. I think maybe you have too, because we have discussed it so often. Nothing they say shocks me. There is no introspection, no reflection, no change of course for them. They just keep doubling down on what they've been doing for 10 straight years.
Profoundly predictable, Sean, to your point. And we talk about this being the 24th year since 9/11. And one of the things that comes to mind in terms of the unity that we felt after those horrific attacks, and I was in New York that day, that unity was best exemplified during Game 3 World Series between the Yankees, Arizona Diamondbacks in the Bronx, Yankee Stadium, October 2001. We all recall President George W. Bush throws out the ceremonial first pitch to huge cheers and chants of USA, USA. He throws a perfect strike from the rubber, mind you, wearing, bulletproof vest and a jacket, and it was such a great feeling. And you can make the argument that that was the highlight of his presidency. And now, here in 2025, we have a legacy media that is so intent in not informing the country, but dividing it. And we saw it again yesterday after Charlie was shot. We saw outlets like MSNBC and now, thankfully, ex-analysts like Matthew Dowd saying that Charlie deserved it, or anchor Katie Tur, I should say that in scare quotes, saying that President Trump would exploit this assassination, all while we didn't know whether Charlie was alive or dead at that point. We saw it on CBS this morning. You played Nate Burleson. He's an anchor, allegedly, questioning whether the rhetoric coming out of the Republican Party is the problem. Or on CNN, where that ridiculous news network said that the gunman had cultural writings on the gun that was actually engraved with transgender and anti-fascist ideology. As Don Jr. just told you, what happened to Steve Scalise and what happened to President Trump twice, and obviously we saw it with Rand Paul in his own front yard, and now Charlie Kirk, whose young, beautiful children will never see their father again. It's so heartbreaking, it's so heart-wrenching that when you think about it, his poor wife Erica and what she's going through right now, I am sorry. The fact that we had what we had after 9/11 compared to now, and the fact that the legacy media is somehow pointing fingers and casting blame on the victims, I don't even know what to say at this point, Sean. It's gut-wrenching and it's nauseating, quite frankly.
Well, you know, they have paid a price because everything they threw at Donald Trump, and you had the entire legacy media mob. And I said after the election, I said back in 2007 that journalism is dead. I said after this election, the legacy media mob is dead. They threw every conspiracy theory, they peddled every lie, they used every bit of lawfare, propaganda, misinformation, and America didn't listen to them. And they'll never regain that trust, and nor should they. Joe Concha, thank you. All right, let's break down what we have learned tonight. Earlier, TMZ released new video footage showing the person of interest walking along the street near the campus. Now, notice, we'll show you again, that's the wrong video. If you look to the TMZ video, you'll notice this individual on the left side of your screen. He will be walking. He appears not only to be limping, but really to be dragging. Watch him drag his right leg here. Watch, it's like he's dragging it. We're not sure what that is. We suspect that he probably had a rifle or part of that rifle in that right leg side. There's other anecdotal evidence that we'll show you in a minute also. The Utah Department for Public Safety released new pictures of the person of interest tonight. Now, let's go to those pictures. If you look at this and you look at the right leg again, in this case, the ankle and knee, you can see something protruding outside of that leg area. Now, look at this picture. Here's another one of the photos released tonight. Look at the other side of the leg and see how it is dramatically bigger than it should be. Now, here is the rest of the TMZ video that took place apparently after. That limp, dragging leg, that was all before the shooting. This is a little quicker, so pay very close attention. This individual's running. This individual's not limping. But if that's the same person, that person's not limping anymore, and it would appear to be after the assassination, if in fact this is the individual, the person of interest that they discussed tonight. Now, just before 10 o'clock Eastern Time, authorities gave an update sharing new video of the alleged shooter on the rooftop before jumping off and running away. All right, let's put it all together. We now have a plethora of new information, hopefully to put together. Here with reaction, Fox News contributor Ted Williams, also former FBI special agent, Fox News contributor Nicole Parker, former FBI investigator Bill Daley. Nicole, we'll start with you. Put it all together. I'm getting notes from friends. Some were hoping for more tonight from the FBI. I do believe that video is very, very critical, and I'm hoping somebody knows